Okay, well, we have finally made it to the last scene in the story of Joseph. And I hope that the last couple of months has been as good for you as it has been for me. This is one of my favorite places in the Bible. It's got just so much richness to it. We've traveled with Joseph through the ups of his life and the downs of his life and just everything in between. It's been quite a journey with him. But now we are to the final scenes. And this is really what makes up the final part of his story, is his dad, Jacob, dies, and then Joseph dies. And I want to read these two scenes to you. So the first one's in Genesis 49. This is Jacob's death. And listen to how the Bible describes it. It says, then, this is starting in verse 29 of Genesis 49. Then he, talking about Jacob, commanded them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field at Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah, his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah, his wife. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were bought from the Hittites. When Jacob finished commanding his sons, he drew up his feet into his bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. And if you keep reading in the story, it says a great company took Jacob's body back to this land in Canaan and there buried him. Then we get to Genesis 50, starting in verse 24. This is now Joseph's death. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob, to that land. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old. Now, when I read those two scenes, here's what it makes me ask. What is going on here? Like, why is Jacob so concerned about not being buried in Egypt? He's moved to Egypt. This is kind of his home now. This is where all of his sons are. This is where his family now is. Why is he so concerned about not being buried there? So much so that he's like, kids, you got to take my bones back here. You got to bury me back there in the land of Canaan. Why is that? And why is it when Joseph dies, he looks at his people and he's like, guys, kids, family, when we leave here, do not leave my bones here when we leave Egypt. You've got to take my bones from Egypt back to that land, back to Canaan. Why is that? Why are they so concerned about these things? And in a lot of ways, this is a picture for us. Right? They are showing us their concern to get their bones back, their bodies back to the land promised by God, to the promised land. Now, I want to do just a little bit of work on tracing that theme of the promised land through the New Testament or through the Old Testament, and then on to the New for you for a minute. Okay, so it starts back in Genesis 1 and 2. When you just start the Bible and you start reading, here is what you find in its opening pages: that God is preparing a place for his people. That's what's happening in Genesis 1. It's day 1 what he's doing. Day 2, he is taking this chaotic land and he's preparing that land for his people to be there. Then on day 6, he creates our first parents, Adam and Eve. And he invites now his people into this land that he has made for them. And here's how I want you to see Genesis 1 and 2. You have 3 components happening. In Genesis 1 and 2, you have God's presence with God's people in God's place. That is how God originally made this world. My presence is going to be with my people in this place that I have prepared for them. Now, if you just keep reading in the Bible, you know that Genesis 3, everything goes bad. It's the catastrophe of what theologians would call the fall. Sin got introduced into the equation. Our first parents rebelled and disobeyed God. And because of their pride and rebellion, they were kicked out of the garden. They lost God's presence and God's place. That's Genesis 3. Now, inside of their sin and the consequences of their sin, we have the first promise of someone to come who can make these things right. In Genesis 3:15, we have the promise of a serpent crusher. We get God's first hint of he's got a plan to fix what sin has broken. He's going to send this serpent crusher, and the serpent crusher is going to crush the head of the serpent, Satan himself, and he is going to undo everything that sin has done. This serpent crusher is going to make a way to bring God's people back into God's place where God's presence can dwell with them forever. The serpent crusher is going to do that work of restoring what sin has corrupted and what sin cost. Then you fast forward to Genesis chapter 12. In Genesis chapter 12, God calls Abraham and he makes a promise to Abraham. I am going to give you a place, Abraham. I'm promising you a new land. And the Old Testament describes that promised land as flowing with milk and honey. It kind of sounds like paradise, doesn't it? It's amazing. Kind of sounds like the Garden of Eden recreated. It's supposed to give you those feels. This is going to be a land. This promised land in the Old Testament is going to be the place where God's presence and God's people would again dwell together. That's the promise to Abraham. And then God, after Abraham dies, he reaffirms that promise to Isaac, Abraham's son. Then Isaac dies, and he reaffirms it to Jacob, Isaac's sons. I have a place, a promised land for you, Jacob. And that land is going to be where my people and my presence dwell again together. Now, we take it to the end of the story, the two scenes that we just heard. And this helps us make sense of why they're reacting this way. In Genesis 49 and 50, you have both Jacob and Joseph saying, you better not leave me in Egypt. Whatever you do, don't leave my bones there. Don't leave my body there. You've got to get my bones, my bodies back to the promised land. I want to be buried in that place. Now, let me take a step back now and try to connect the big meta-narrative of the Bible. When you read through the Old Testament and you get all of the promised land language, I mean, the land is a big deal in the Old Testament, that place that God has promised. All of those promises about the promised land, this place where the Old Testament people of God, they're just leaning into it, they're anticipating it, right? So much of the story of the Old Testament is about getting God's people back into that promised land. The whole theme of the promised land in the Old Testament is meant to be a picture, a signpost, pointing us to God's future promise of this place he has prepared for his people to dwell with him forever. It's called heaven. All that Old Testament language of promised land. It's helping us anticipate and look forward to heaven. According to Hebrews 11, Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, they were not just anticipating the land promised in the Old Testament, the land of Canaan. They were seeing through the land of Canaan, the promised land, all the way to, it says in Hebrews 11, to a better country, a heavenly country. They were seeing through this earthly promise all the way to that future promise where God's presence would dwell with God's people forever in God's place. Now, here is where we're going today. I want to just spend a morning trying to carry your bones to that place. Just to give you a forward lean and a lot of anticipation for what is that place that God has prepared for us. I want to just spend a morning setting our gaze, lifting up our gaze to can we dream about that? Can we just set our minds on that future place? So let's just think about the place this morning. Let's consider, let's dream about what the Bible says about this place called heaven. Okay, let's start here. What is heaven? What is it? The Bible uses that word in a couple of different ways. One way is just to direct your attention up to the sky. So when it's talking about the promise of Abraham, it says that his descendants are going to be as many as the stars in heaven. So one way the Bible uses heaven is just to say the sky, or what's above us, up there where the stars are. Another way the Bible uses the word heaven is to talk about what we might call the present heaven. The Bible would also call the present heaven paradise, right? It's also a way to talk about that. It's using it to talk about this temporary place that Christians would go right now between their death and the second coming of Jesus. So if you've ever said to someone, I have a family member who has died and he is in heaven, what you mean is not this final full picture of heaven down there. You mean a temporary heaven, where God's people go when they die right now before Jesus comes back. Now, the third way it's used is not to describe this temporary heaven, but this future, or we could call it the final heaven, where God's people will dwell in God's place with God's presence forever. It's also used to describe that. And this is the predominant way it's used in the Bible. It's used like this, like 250 times in the New Testament. So this is the predominant way. Anytime you're seeing the new heavens and the new earth, in the Bible, it's not talking about where a Christian would go right now. It's talking about where Christians are going to go when Jesus comes back for his bride and rescues us for that final second coming, right? It's where we're going to be forever with God. We could think of the way we're going to use heaven this morning as the final home where God's people will dwell with God's presence forever. That's the heaven we're talking about today. I just want to whet your appetite and get you dreaming and thinking about what God has prepared for you. So that's what is heaven. Now let's just talk really briefly about where is heaven. When most people are asked the question, where is heaven, they're going to think up. Like it's up there somewhere. But that's actually not how the Bible thinks about our future home. It's not an up there reality, it's a down here reality. So in Revelation 21 and 22, here's what you're seeing. It's a picture of heaven coming down to earth, not us going up to heaven. Our future home is not an up there reality, it's a down here reality. It's an earthy reality. It's a new heaven and a new earth, right? It's a here. It's a restored and rescued and redeemed universe, set free from the curse of sin, restored to what this place was originally meant to be. So it's not an up there thing. It's a down here thing. Like every one of God's people getting their own piece of renewed earth to live their life on. That's the future. It's a down here earthy reality. Okay, and then the third thing, I just want to dream with you about this, is what is that place going to be like? What's it going to be like? We just get to dream and think about that together. What's it going to be like? When you think of the word heaven, ask yourself, what comes to your mind? What instantly fills your heart when you think of heaven? Whatever you just thought ought to make your soul begin to sing. It ought to. But what I have found is that many Christians have very small thoughts of their future. Listen to how one author says it. He says, nearly every Christian I've spoken with has some idea that eternity is an unending church service. If it is, I hope you get a little better preaching than you get from me. You know what I'm saying? I hope you do. Nearly every Christian I've spoken with has some idea that eternity is an unending church service. We've settled on an image of the never-ending sing-along in the sky. One great hymn after another. And if it's going to be that, I kind of like our worship team to do it. I mean, those guys are amazing, so I could do some of that. Yeah, that is worth clapping about. One great hymn after another, forever and ever, amen. And then he says, and as soon as we imagine that, our hearts sink. Is that it? Is that really what the good news of our future is? And then he says, and then we sigh and feel guilty that we're not more spiritual. We lose heart, and then we turn once more to the present, like this life right now, to find whatever life we can. Now, I think that paragraph right there describes so much of our life. Because we don't have a view of our future that makes our soul sing. Everything in our life shrinks back to the here and now, this present life, and we're just trying to eke out as much as we can here. We better get it now if we're ever going to get it. We better spend it now if we're ever going to spend it. We better go get this car, do this house thing, do this, all of these things now because this is all we've got. Our life shrinks back to this. Now, I'm not saying your picture of heaven is an unending, church service. But I do think there is a great chance that your picture of heaven is way too small. And I just want to do everything we can to set some dreams in your heart, to let those dreams grow and to bloom and flower into something big and beautiful. Contrast that small view of heaven with this in 1 Corinthians chapter 2. Paul says, but as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man imagined, what God has prepared for those who love him. All right. That's a pretty big statement. That is God through Paul saying, the place that I have prepared for you, if you could see it right now, would make your heart explode. It would blow your mind if you could just see what I have prepared for you. Now, we need to just take a step back and ask ourselves, who is the one making this promise? Who is the one saying, hey, no eye has seen, heart has imagined what I prepared for them? It's God. It's the God who made the Alps. It is the God who saw in his heart the Grand Canyon and made it. Doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's the handiwork of God who does that. This is the God who created your taste buds and a great steak with all that flavor and brought them together. Can we say yes and amen to that God? That's an amazing thing, isn't it? It's the God who's that creative, though, who is that good, who does all of these sorts of things. It's the God who makes a sunrise and a sunset. It's the God who made the oceans. It's the God who made friendship and marriage and the blessing of kids and all of the things that you enjoy most in life. It's the God who made that, who is then saying, hey, I know you think all of those are awesome, but your heart couldn't imagine what I've got in front of you. It's that God. It is the God who made everything you love most. That same God is the one saying, you just wait to see what I've got planned for you. You just wait to see what's in front of you. Maybe I could say it this way. When you think of heaven, if heaven feels boring to you, it betrays your thoughts that you think God is boring. The God who put in you a thrill for pleasure and adventure, of joy and happiness, that you think that God who put that in you is now going to sell you short with what he's prepared for you. But no, he's not. He's saying the God who gave you desire for all of that joy, all of that pleasure and adventure is saying, I put that in you and it's going to find its full expression when you are with me in my place, with my people forever. The Bible is just inviting us to dream here, to take that word heaven and just let our minds run with the Lord of what he has prepared for us. And then verse 10 says, these things God has revealed to us through the Spirit. You can't imagine it, but these things God has revealed to us through the Spirit. God has been so gracious to give us the Scriptures. That the Spirit of God has given us the Scriptures so that now we have a starting spot to think about heaven, to dream about heaven, this place that God has prepared for us. So I'm going to give you just 7 descriptions, 7 starting spots when you're thinking about dreaming about heaven. Here's the first one. In the Scriptures, heaven is pictured as a city. This is Hebrews 11, verse 10, Hebrews 13, verse 14, Revelation 21, verse 2. All these places are picturing heaven as a city. And when you hear the word city, you have an understanding of what that word means. You know what a city is. A city has buildings and culture and art and music and athletics and goods and services and events of all sorts. A city, of course, is filled with people. And those people are doing all sorts of things. They're in the middle of a lot of activities. They're working. They're gathering together. They're having conversations. They're doing all of those things. So here's a starting point for you. The next time you go to Dallas or Fort Worth, just look around and imagine, what might this be like if it was unstained by sin? This place to start, to just dream. Let your heart imagine these things. Secondly, heaven in the Scriptures is pictured as a country. So as a city and as a country. This is Hebrews 11, verse 16. It's also implied in Philippians chapter 3, verse 20. And we know countries. Countries have territories, rulers, pride in their identity, citizens who are both diverse on one side and unified on the other. We know countries. So the Bible says we have a heavenly one of those. So we can just think about what we know as countries now, and we can just begin to dream of what would a country look like unstained by sin. We can just let our hearts dream and think about what that might be. The third picture is a heaven's pictured with resurrection bodies. 1 Corinthians 15, verses 40 through 44. Now, resurrection bodies are great news for anyone who is on the backside of the prime of life. Right? I mean, I give myself a hard time with this. I can't sneeze without throwing out my back. I mean, it's gotten bad for me. And when I think resurrection bodies, my soul does start to sing. I mean, what might those be like? So we know what a body is now, and we can begin to think, what surprises might God have in a resurrection body? It's going to be you, but it's going to be a new you, a remade you, a you without any of the corruption of sin, without being tarnished by sin in any way. Jonathan Edwards, when he's thinking about this, He says, what if your resurrection body doesn't have 5 senses like your body now? What if it has 1,000 senses? So now there's parts of this world that you have no idea even exist that you can take in. There's parts of God that you have no idea even exist that now you have senses to see and to feel and experience. It's just allowing you to dream about what might a resurrection body be like. Fourthly, heaven's pictured as perfect rest. Hebrews 4, 10 through 11, Revelation 14, 13. Take a deep breath for a moment, just a deep breath in. Can you imagine never feeling hurried or rushed in life? Never scurrying around to get to the next, thing. Never hurried, never rushed. Now take that longing and dream about what it means to enter into your forever rest. You should dream about that. Think about that. What surprises might God have there for you? So it's pictured as a place of perfect rest. Fifthly, it's also pictured as a place with perfect work. Perfect work. This is Revelation 22:3. It pictures us working as God's servants. This is Luke 19. It pictures people ruling in heaven. So there is work to be done. Work is not a result of sin. Work was there in the Garden of Eden. Adam, I want you to work and to tend the garden. It's there in the heaven one day. Post-sin, work is going to show up there. So it's not a result of sin. We're going to be working for the rest of our days. Now, here's the problem with work right now. Work right now works against us. Right? We see this in Genesis chapter 3. Here's a result of sin. All of our work now has thorns and thistles in it. Work is frustrating, it's hard, it's painful, it's a step forward and 2 steps back. It's just hard. This is what work is now because of sin. But there, in our heavenly home, there our work will work with us. Not against us now, but with us. Let me give you this picture. If you picture your work as gardening, your work in heaven is going to be like gardening with no weeds. Wouldn't that be a thing? I mean, think about your work right now if there were no thorns, no thistles, no weeds in it. Think about the fruit you could grow without all of those things, right? And that will be your work forever. It's going to be work that is rescued from sin. And that kind of work will actually work. It's going to be enjoyable and amazing and great work forever that we get to do. Producing things and doing things that are just going to blow our minds one day. It's pictured as a place with perfect work. Sixthly, heaven's pictured as a new earth, as a new earth. The bright future that God has in front of you is a new world that is unstained by sin, unpolluted by sin. It's a new heavens and a new earth. This is the way that John describes it in Revelation 21. He says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eye, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning or crying or pain, for the former things have passed away.' And he who was seated on the throne said, 'Behold, I am making all things new.'" Is that not going to be a great day? That's going to be a great day, isn't it? Now notice, when John is seeing this picture of heaven, he does not describe it as a non-earth, but a new earth. A new, restored, something that has been rescued from the curse of sin. It's that kind of earth. So I just want to say this again, that heaven is earthy. It's not on a cloud somewhere up there. It's down here on a piece of real estate, renewed. Everything made new. No more sin in the equation. It's that picture that the Bible wants to give you. Listen to Randy Alcorn talk about this. He says, the biblical doctrine of the new earth implies something startling. That if we want to know what the ultimate heaven, our eternal home, will be like, the best place to start is by looking around us. So, he says, look out of the window, take a walk, talk with friends. Use your God-given skills to paint or to draw or to build a shed or to write a book. But imagine it all of it in its original condition. That's great counsel. When you think about heaven, here's a starting point the Bible wants to give you. Open up your window, look outside, go for a walk, look around, and then just let your heart begin to dream about what this might be without sin. What kind of a place God might have in store for us. It's pictured as a new earth. And then seventh, heaven's pictured as the dwelling place of God. What makes heaven heaven is not a renewed earth. What makes heaven heaven is not you having great family reunions with Christians who have gone before. What makes heaven heaven is not that there will be no more sin and suffering. What makes heaven, the core of what makes heaven heaven is Revelation 21:3. Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be their God. The dwelling place, or the core of what makes heaven heaven is God is going to be there. He's going to be there. That Wayne Grudem describes it this way. But more important than all the physical beauty of the heavenly city, more important than the fellowship we'll enjoy with all of God's people from all nations and all periods in history, more important than reigning over God's kingdom, more important than any of these will be the fact that we'll be in the presence of God. He says, our greatest joy will be in seeing the Lord himself and in being with him forever. When John speaks of the blessing of the heavenly city, the culmination of those blessings come in this short statement. They shall see his face. They're going to see his face. When we look into the face of our Lord, we will see him as the fulfillment of everything we know to be good and right and desirable in the universe. He goes on to say, as we gaze into the face of our Lord, we will know more fully than ever that before that in your presence there is fullness of joy, and at your right hand are pleasures forevermore. That is what makes heaven heaven. Church, there is going to be a day where you see God face to face. I don't know when you think about your life what the greatest day of your life is, but I can tell you what you will one day say to that question. One day, in a million years from now, you're going to say the greatest day of my life was when I died and I saw God. You should dream about that. What is that going to be like? Like the one your heart was made for. You see him. He's right there in front of you. The one your heart was made to be satisfied in he's there before you. You should just let your heart go and dream about that. Imagine what that will be like. So this passage shows us the picture, the promised land. It shows us now the place. It's just helping us dream and think about what that place will be. And now we need to ask the question, what should we do in light of that? What should we do in light of that? And I think the answer that how a Christian ought to respond to where we've gone so far this morning is we ought to respond by saying yes to Colossians chapter 3. Here's Colossians chapter 3. If then you have been raised with Christ. So that is saying if you have been rescued by Jesus, if you're part of God's family, if this incredibly bright future is what is out in front of you, if that is true, if you've been raised with Christ, then seek the things that are above. That's a command. Seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on the things that are above, not on the things of this earth. Here is what we ought to do in light of this place that God has prepared for his people to dwell with them forever. Set our mind on that place. Just let our hearts run there. Keep our attention on our heavenly home, the place we're going to spend forever with the Lord. We just have to set our minds on that. It is a call to seek, to set our minds on things above. Our heavenly country, that new Jerusalem, that place that God has prepared for us. Now, the Greek word to set our minds, that is the same word used to describe in Luke 15 the lady who lost the coin, who's on that desperate search for the coin. It's like she's obsessed with it. She can't stop thinking about it. It's I'm not going to do anything else until I find the coin. I'm going to move all this furniture in the house. I'm going to rip this house apart until I find the coin. Paul is saying, set your mind on what's to come like that. Obsess about it. Give your heart to it. Keep your attention on that thing right there. And it's in the present tense, this command. That means Paul is not imagining a spasm of doing this, like I'm going to think about it for the next 30 seconds and then I move on to something else. He's like, no, the present tense is it's an ongoing action. It's every moment of your life you're doing this. Maybe you could think of it this way. Paul is calling you to be a heavenly minded human being. To set your minds on what's above. And if we are going to spend forever in that place with God's people, in God's presence, doesn't it make sense for us to do that? Like to think about what that home is going to be like? Listen to J.C. Ryle encourages. He says, the man who is about to sail for New Zealand as a settler is naturally anxious to know something about his future home. Its climate, its employments, its inhabitants, its ways, its customs. Just picture. You're about to pick up your life and move to New Zealand. He's like, you'd be thinking a lot about New Zealand. He goes on. All these are subjects of deep interest to him. You're leaving the land of your nativity and you're going to spend the rest of your life in a new hemisphere. It would be strange indeed if you didn't desire information about your new abode. Now, surely, if we hope to dwell forever in that better country, that heavenly country, we ought to seek all the knowledge we can get about it. Before we go to our eternal home, we should become acquainted with it. Doesn't that make sense to do that? Like if you're going to spend forever in that place, we should get pretty obsessed about setting our mind on that place, about being acquainted with that space, about getting our soul ready to step into that space with eager anticipation. Now, how would we do that? How would we set our minds on the things that are above? Let me just give you a couple of encouragements with that. Here's one way you can do that, is by meditating on your mortality. Friend, you are going to die. That day is coming. And because death is a scary thing to think about, what most of us do is avoid all thoughts of it. You shouldn't do that. You should think about your own mortality, about your own death. One of the things I appreciate most about pastoring is that it puts me around death. I'm just in rooms where the hardest thing has happened. It's the loss of a spouse. It's the loss of a child. People losing friends, loved ones. And one of the things I'm so grateful is this job ties me to that reality. It doesn't allow me to avoid these things. It makes me consider death. You should meditate on your mortality. Every now and then, or once a month, we'll get our staff together for what we call refresh. It's just a way of us investing into our staff, trying to refresh their hearts in Jesus. And periodically what we will do is all go down to a cemetery together and spend time with Jesus in a cemetery. And it's kind of strange, but here's why we do that. Because you're getting to spend time with Jesus looking at headstones that are reminding you, here's a life. They were here for a few short years, a little dash, and then they're no longer here. Here's another person. They were here, little dash, no longer here. And eventually it helps you connect. My life is eventually going to do that. I'm going to be here for a minute. There's going to be this little dash, and then I'm not going to be here. It keeps us awake to that reality. It's a way to meditate on our mortality. It's a way of reminding us that we really are pilgrims, quickly passing through this life. That's your life. It's the life of a pilgrim. It's just a few short years here, and then it's over. Part of what that meditating on our mortality does for us, it just helps remind us that this life is not everything. And everything in our world is trying to convince you right now that this life is everything. So you better go do everything now. Get your bucket list. Make sure you get that trip in. Make sure you get that car in. Make sure you get all the things in that you want to get in, because this is your only chance to get all those things in. And the Bible's like, no, it is not. That's not true. Here's the way the Bible sees this life. This life is pre-life. Just a few short years, you're a pilgrim here. Here is what happens to every pilgrim. You pass through this life, and then you get to real life. Like the actual life that God has designed you to live. Like you get to go to the place that he's actually designed for you to spend forever. It's pre-life now, and it's real life forever. And all the things that you most long for in life are not going to happen in pre-life. They're going to happen in your real life, the life that's to come. So we should meditate on our mortality so that we can see life for what it really is. This is pre-life. That is real life. So we have to think about our death. We have to consider these things. This is one way we set our mind on the things above. We meditate on our mortality. Here's the second thing we can do, is remember the options. Part of what it means to be heavenly minded is that you remember there are only two options for every human being who has ever lived. It is either heaven or hell forever. It is either the welcome of God forever or the wrath of God forever. It is only two options. It is pleasure forevermore or you'll perish forevermore. Those are the only two options. I have been for the last few months just saying this statement out loud every day. Hell is a real place and real people go there. And here's what that statement does for me. It's like smelling salts. It's like it just jolts you back into, oh, that's real. So if that is true, it should affect the way that I live now. That should have some bearings on the way that I live now. It should influence the way I interact with people right now. These are the only two options. This is one way we can set our mind on heaven. We can remember there are only two options, only two. It's heaven or hell forever. The third way we can set our mind on things above is by living for later. We live for later. The Bible is clear that what you do now will determine your experience of forever. What you do now, like the way you live now, will influence, determine your experience of forever. So every sacrifice you make for Jesus, every time you say yes to Jesus, every time you give generously to the causes of Jesus, you are creating in your soul the capacity to enjoy forever even more. Every time you do that, your enjoyment of forever is enlarging. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Your capacity to enjoy more and more of it is growing every time you say yes to Jesus. This is why Jonathan Edwards, in his early 20s, he started making resolutions to the Lord. Like, here are commitments I'm making. And here was one of his resolutions. I am resolved to endeavor to obtain for myself as much happiness in the other world as I possibly can. Christians think like that. Here is my goal in pre-life. I want to obtain as much happiness in this life right now, in the future life, real life. I want to do everything I can now to obtain as much happiness there in real life. This is the way Christians see and live. We're thinking about real life. What can I do now to create more capacity for forever? We talk about this all the time in terms of generosity. Here are the two options you have with the money that God has entrusted to you to steward. Option number one is you can enjoy it now in pre-life. You can do the things now that you want to do and get all your bucket list check, all the things. You can enjoy it now in pre-life, or you can send it ahead to real life where you will enjoy it forever. That's the way the Bible sees our generosity. It's Matthew chapter 6. You can enjoy it now, pre-life, a few short years, and it's over. You send it ahead, you can enjoy it forever in real life. Like forever, for a billion years from now, you're still enjoying those things. That's the other option. And here's what a Christian does. He's just doing everything, she's just doing everything right now to create a bigger experience of forever. It's what it looks like to set your mind on the things to come. Here is one of the key things you can do to not waste your life. Like if you're like, I don't want to waste pre-life. Here's the main thing you can do is to live for the things now, right now in pre-life, that will mean most to you then in real life. If you will do that, you will be creating just more capacity to enjoy forever. Live for the things now that will mean most to you then. This is what Christians do. We live for later. It's how we set our minds on the things to come. And then fourthly, how do we set our mind on what's above? We dream about our future. We dream about our future. Here's one way to talk about the good news of Jesus. We're all idiots. Part one. It's just, we're all sinful. Sin makes us dumb. We're all idiots. And we have an incredibly bright future in Jesus. For all those who will come into Jesus' family, who will receive Jesus, he opens up this amazingly bright future for us. So we're all idiots. We have an incredibly bright future, and anyone can get in on this. And here is one way to set your mind on the things above. You just begin to dream about that future. Years ago, this is probably a decade ago, we took a little family walk in our neighborhood, and the question that came out is like, let's just think about heaven. What do you think heaven's going to be like? And Eva, she was probably 6 at the time, she's like, when I think about heaven, here's what I think it's going to be like. I think it's going to be yellow. And I'm like, please, God, no. And then Caleb was like, I think it's going to be raining Tootsie Rolls. And I'm like, please, God, yes. Let's do that one. I'm in on that. But it's just modeling like, we should ask that question and just let our minds go. Dream with the Lord. What kind of surprises might he have for us in our future? We should dream about these things. Let your imagination run wild with Jesus. One day you are going to meet Jesus face to face. What do you think that's going to be like? One day you're going to meet that spouse that you lost. That child that you lost. What is that going to be like? One day you're going to step into resurrection bodies. You should dream. What is that going to be like? When C.S. Lewis is imagining it in The Last Battle, this is the last book and the last scene of the last book in the Chronicles of Narnia. The kids have just made it into Aslan's country. So the kids and their friends, they're in heaven now. And this is him picturing what that is going to be like. And if you know that scene, here's what instantly happens. They begin to run further up and further in. That's his way of they are exploring all the things that God has prepared for them. So they're running further up and further in. And here is what they notice. They don't get tired when they're running. They're just running and it's going great. There's no need to stop. They can just keep running further up and further in. And he goes on to say, they ran faster and faster till it was more like flying than running. And instead of their breath growing short, it only came quicker and quicker, and they laughed for joy as they ran. It's just him imagining, what is that moment of entering Aslan's country going to look like? You, friends, should let your minds drift and dream into those places. Because your best days, I don't care what, your best days are not behind you. Your best day, the best day of your life is still in front of you, church. That's where it is. The best day is in front of you. So, why is this important? I want to close with this. Why is this important? This is just a way for us to tie this back into the Joseph story. Why is this important? Here's why it's important. Because pre-life is hard. Because in pre-life, this life, the life we're in right now, our designer lives all die. Dreams get crushed. Marriages end. Betrayal happens. Spouses die, kids die, jobs don't go the way we want. Every single one of us in this room will join Joseph in the collapse of our designer life. And when that happens, we, like Joseph, are going to have to have something inside of us that says, I got to get my bones back to the promised land. Somebody's got to carry my bones back there. I've got to have my heart set on what is to come. John wrote the book of Revelation to Christians. And these Christians were suffering terribly. And it just got worse for them. In the first century, the Emperor Domitian, it was the moment where he sanctioned widespread Christian persecution. So now Christians are getting their homes plundered. People are dying, kids are dying, families are dying. Some are being tarred and then lit as a light to light up a roadway. This is what's happening to Christians. Some are being thrown into arenas where they're being ripped to shreds by animals. Right? That's what happened in the first century. All of that is going down. And what did John give them to face that? Answer. He gave them Revelation 21 and Revelation 22. He gave them a picture of their incredibly bright future. And here is what history shows us. It was enough for them. It actually worked for them. History shows us that these early Christians endured suffering with peace and poise. They were thrown into the arena with lions, and as they were thrown in, they were singing hymns to Jesus. That's what was happening in that moment. They were joyfully accepting the plundering of their property. They were forgiving the very people who killed them. They were able to suffer faithfully, so faithfully that it became attractive for those who were doing the killing. This is why Tertullian says the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. How did they do it? What did they have? A bright, vivid, compelling picture of their future. When their designer life died, their future life caught them, stabilized them, and allowed them to faithfully endure suffering. And church, if it worked for them, it can work for you.